everyone. Welcome to another episode of Girls Night. If you've been listening to the past couple episodes, then welcome back. And if this is your first time joining us, then welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. In this episode, I'm going to dive into some advice from my parents, from my mom and dad, that I think everybody could benefit from. It certainly has helped me throughout the years. And so if you're listening to this episode, just know that there's something in here for you. So let's get started. Hi everyone. Life can get a little crazy, so let's talk about it. If you're ready to dive deeper, talk about what really matters, and feel a little more empowered, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Carley Doxtator. I'm a life coach, baker, dog mom of two, and you're always there for you gal pal. And I'm so excited to have you join me. So grab your fuzzy socks, put on your comfy pants, and let's have girls' night. So, as I said in the intro, this is an episode all about things that my parents have told me throughout the years, advice that has really helped me through. Even if I did not agree with it at first or I pushed back on it, in the end, this has always helped me and has helped my mindset in some very significant ways. And I really just love my parents so much. And I look back at everything they've told me and everything that they've helped me through. And I'm just so grateful for them. They're basically my best friends, besides my brother and sister, of course. My whole family is my best friend. But anyways, I wanted to make this podcast episode about all the things that really stuck with me through the years so far from my mom and dad. I'm sure they will have plenty of other nuggets that they surprise me with along the way, further down the road. But here's what I got for you so far. So the first piece of advice is actually from my dad, and this is more focused on dating and relationships. I went through kind of a hard time where all these guys were just rejecting me. For a little bit of background, I had just gone through one breakup, which I had actually broken up with him, but this guy had broken into my house and I felt really violated by that. After him, I started dating somebody else, and this guy asked me to be his girlfriend and then ghosted me after asking me to be his girlfriend. I actually showed up to his house to get an explanation because he stopped responding to me. And that one really hurt. And then after that was a guy that I dated for a long time. If you want the whole story on that, then, or more of the story really, you can listen to my first podcast episode. But that last relationship was kind of on and off for a while, and it was just really hard on me. And after one of these times that this last guy had broken things off with me, I was talking to my mom and dad about it. And I just was at a point where I felt like something was wrong with me. I felt really down. And my dad looked at me and he said, "Carley, there is nothing wrong with you. You're just the type of girl that a guy marries, so they don't want to date you." So of course, me being myself, I focused on the boys don't want to date you part. And I was like, wow, great. That's great, Dad. Like, thanks. That really makes me feel better. But then he went on to clarify. So he said, there's girls that men sleep with, there's girls that they date, and there are girls that they marry. So unless they're ready to get married, they don't want anything to do with it. So there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing that you can do to make them ready for marriage either. You are like your mom. You're a girl that guys marry. So actually, a little background about my dad that I think might help. My dad was a huge player when he was growing up. He used to make a joke that he had a girl in every state that he could go visit whenever he wanted to, which I'm sure wasn't actually a joke. I'm sure that was more true than a joke. But my dad was a very attractive guy when he was younger, very charismatic, and he was just a player. So I like to hear his opinion on these types of things where the man brain is at. But he had also said that he never wanted to get married ever, that he was perfectly happy living the bachelor life until he died. And then he met my mom. They got pregnant with my sister Sydney, and he said that after that, everything else seemed like such a complete waste of time. So I think there's some pretty important lessons in this one. First of all is you can't make somebody ready for something if they're not ready for it, even if you are ready for it. So if you are in a relationship, or if you are seeing somebody or whatever, if you are ready to take it to the next level, if you're ready to get married and they aren't, no amount of convincing on your side will ever make them ready for that until they decide to be ready. And same with dating. If you're ready for a committed relationship and someone that you really like, that you're seeing, wants to keep things casual, then nothing you do or say can make them ready for that commitment unless they themselves decide that they are ready for it. And I think that's a really important lesson to keep in mind, because it's so easy to fall into that trap of, oh, well, if I do more, if I show up for them more, if I do more nice things for them, then maybe they'll like me more and then maybe they'll choose me. But that's just not how it works. And someone not choosing you isn't necessarily a reflection of your worth. It certainly isn't a reflection of you being not good enough, because you are enough. It's just a reflection of being on a different page or being on a different time frame than each other. So if that's where you're at, try not to shame yourself, try not to shame them, because it's just that you have differing needs at this time. And then another thing that I got out of this, which I thought was interesting, and of course, have your own opinions on everything that I'm saying, but was how my dad said that there's different types of girls that men classify them as. So to repeat, there's girls that men sleep with, girls that they date, and girls that they marry. And I just thought that that was a really interesting peek into a person's mind. And that kind of makes sense, right? Even as a woman, I can say, like, there's certain guys that I can see myself dating. There's certain guys that I only see myself being friends with. And there's certain guys that I could see myself marrying. And it has nothing to do with like who they are. It doesn't make them a bad person in any way, shape, or form. It's just differing levels of attraction and chemistry and connection. So I think that kind of actually leads back to the first point, where you can't make somebody want something with you that they don't want with you. And the third thing I would like to point out about this is, yes, my dad said that I'm a girl that guys marry, but that doesn't give me any excuse to not do the work that I need to do. Because I am by no means a perfect person. I definitely, especially when this conversation happened, because it was a couple years back, I definitely had some work that I needed to do on myself that I realized I needed to do before I was even ready to be in a more committed relationship like I wanted to. And just because you're the type of person that somebody can see themselves settling down with does not give you an excuse to just stagnate your growth. And it also doesn't give you an excuse to blame the other person for everything that's going wrong in a relationship, because, as I've said before, it takes two to form a relationship, and it takes two to tango. So that's the first piece of advice that I thought was really cool, because it's basically saying, focus on yourself, and when the right person comes, they'll be there and they'll be ready for what you're ready for. And don't try to force anything that's not working out right now. And on to the next piece of advice. This is actually from my dad as well. So for a little bit of background on this one, my sister had gone through a very hard time in the past. She had gotten broken up with, and it was really, really hard on her, and she kind of spiraled. And I was living with her, and I took it on myself to completely take care of her and help her through it, which, looking back, was not the healthiest thing to do. One, because I wasn't letting her learn the lessons that she needed to learn. Two, I was taking on way more than what I was equipped to handle. And three, I was building up resentment towards her because things weren't working out for her the way that I wanted them to. And how selfish is that of me to assume that I know what is best for her when she's going through a hard time? But anyway, so we were at this point. The resentment was building. I was having a really hard time getting along with my sister. She was being really mean to me. I was being really mean to her. It just was not a good situation. And at the same time, whenever I would talk to my parents about it, from my perspective, felt like they were always taking her side. And it was really frustrating, especially my mom. And I love my mom, but it really felt like my mom was always taking my sister's side whenever we got into an argument or anything. And I was sitting there, I was like, why don't you guys see me? Why don't you see what's going on? Why don't you understand what I'm going through? Why is it that I'm always the one in the wrong? That's what it felt like. And there was this one time, and at one point we both were living up with my parents in between apartments during the same period. So it was my parents living back at your parents' house, which is a whole other obstacle that you have to overcome. But also I was dealing with all this with my sister, and we were living there together. And that's not to say everything was bad. It's just that there were really bad moments, and I knew that the resentment inside myself was growing a lot. But it was one of these times where my sister and I got into an argument. And again, my mom took my sister's side, which sucked. And my dad was taking my sister's side too, it felt like. And I was sitting there at the table, and I told him, I was like, why don't you guys ever take my side? Why is it that Cindy is always the one that is in the right? And he looked at me and he said, you know, Carly, sometimes the ones that are the meanest to us are the ones that need our love the most. And that really stuck with me, because here was my sister going through this really hard time, and I was making it all about me. Now, that's not to say if you're in a toxic situation, you should stay. And it's not to say that it's your job to fix other people's problems. Quite the opposite. I think it's more about the grace and the compassion towards the people that you love when they are going through a hard time. Because when you look back at all those situations in your life, you understand that it was never about you. Someone being mean to you is never about you. It's usually always about something that's going on with them. It's about them having a bad day, or them having a hard time in their life for an extended period of time, or them being overwhelmed, and it has to come out somewhere. And lots of times it comes out on the people that we love the most. And I really think that's because we feel safest with the people we love the most. And when you trust someone, you know that you can do these things and they'll still love you and they'll still be there for you. So I think that was a really interesting thing. So I had to find a balance between having compassion for her and having boundaries for myself and compassion for myself. And for a little while, that meant distancing myself a little bit while she figured her stuff out, and to stop acting like I knew what was best for her and what was best for her to heal. But that's always stuck with me when my dad said that sometimes the ones that are the meanest to us are the ones that need our love the most. And I tend to look at all situations through that lens now, and I beg you, try it on, even just for a little bit, and see how much your life changes. Because when you're able to see somebody else's pain through their actions, then the compassion and the empathy you have and the love you have can grow exponentially. And I think a life filled with love and understanding is so much better and so much more beautiful than a life filled with self-pity and hate. And here is another one. This one is focused on money. So growing up, it's actually funny. My mom and dad actually had kind of differing viewpoints on money, and it kind of caused a little friction between them sometimes. But my dad always had this viewpoint that money is money and it'll always come back. And my mom was always more stressed about money. And I'm sure there's other things that go into that. But now that we're older, my mom has actually adopted the viewpoint that my dad has always had, that money always comes back to you. So there's no reason to stress over it. And that's the viewpoint that I have on money too. And that's not to say that I'm some privileged person, because I definitely know what it's like to struggle with money, to wonder how you're going to pay for your groceries and to live paycheck to paycheck. When I first graduated college, I was making like $30,000 a year, and I was living downtown Denver, which is expensive. So I understand what it feels like to struggle. And it's not like my family growing up was like a rich family. We definitely struggled with money at times. But I really do believe that money always comes back to you. When you spend it, it will always come back. So if you are stressed about spending a little extra or splurging on yourself at the grocery store for like the fancy cheese or something like that, like maybe go just buy the fancy cheese and let yourself feel bougie for a little while. That's not to say you should blow your whole budget. That's a whole different thing. Don't overspend. Don't live outside of your means. But the money that you spend always comes back to you. And I want you to think about this for a second. When was the last time that you didn't have any money, that you weren't taken care of? Think about that. I really believe that We just have limits on how much money we allow ourselves to have, but that we always tend to stay around that same limit that we have for ourselves. Money flows in and money flows out, but you always kind of stay at the same baseline of where you're at. So I think that the bigger thing, if you are stressing about money, is working on your mindset with money and feeling safe with having more money. Because money is an energy, just like everything else. Money is an energy. It is a tool that you have at your disposal to make your life the life that you want to have. More recently, too, in addition to money always coming back to you, I've also adopted the mindset of money is like water, and it is Niagara Falls in here, baby. Try something like that on. See what works for you, what resonates with you and your brain and your soul, and repeat that to yourself every day. When you're about to pay a bill, say, money is like water, and it is Niagara Falls in here, baby. And the second you say it, and say it like that, say it with some passion, paying the bill doesn't seem so scary. And focus on all the ways that you are secure and you are taken care of, especially when it comes to financial safety. This next piece of advice, I believe, is something that both my parents have told me actually at separate times. And I mean, I've heard it from them so many times. I think it's from both of them. But my mom and dad actually met when they were a little bit older. So my mom, I believe, was 36 when she met my dad, and my dad was 29 when he met my mom. So if you think about it, especially in standards way back then, they were a little bit older than what people, or from what society says is like the normal age to get married. But that said, my parents have always told me, don't rush into marriage, just enjoy your time first and then get married. And I think this is a twofold type of meaning. So one, taking it from their perspective, is there's no rush to get into a committed relationship. Take your time to learn yourself, get to know yourself, and have fun being single when you're young. I think that's really important. And I think it's so easy to look around us and to look at expectations around us and to think, oh my God, why am I not in a relationship? Why am I not married yet? Especially as a woman. I am 27, and there are literally Uber drivers that will start talking to me about why I'm not married yet. And the first time it happened, I actually felt kind of bad. I was like, there's nothing wrong with me just because I'm not married yet. But that's the kind of societal pressure that there are on people sometimes for marriage. So I think first, just getting to know yourself really well and understanding yourself and what you want out of life and your boundaries and your values and your morals will set you up for a more successful marriage in the long run. Because if you're just getting married to get married, to say that you're married, and you're not actually thinking about those things, and you're not taking the time to see if the person that you're with lines up with those things, to see if you guys are compatible in those really important areas, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And the second part of this message, that of the don't rush into marriage, enjoy your time first and then get married, is once you're in a relationship, I don't think there's any rush to get married and make it official, honestly. I think there's so much beauty, and it's so important to enjoy the moments that you have and to savor every stage of your relationship. Savor the honeymoon stage when you first meet someone and you have the bright googly eyes for them and you can't stop thinking about them. Savor it when you start getting into that period where you have arguments and you're figuring each other out and you're building that trust. Really take it in and savor the moments when you make the relationship from just dating to an official, actual relationship where you aren't seeing other people. And as it grows, and I can't really say how it feels to be a fiance or to be proposed to or to be engaged or all of those stages, but really savor them. I mean, especially like I am so looking forward to being a fiance because one, I know I'm going to be so fucking in love with the man that proposes to me and to the man that I say yes to get married. And I want to savor that, you're in the dating world for so much longer usually than you are a fiance. And you're hopefully married for so much longer than you are a fiance. I think being a fiance is this really short, sweet period of time. It's like that beautiful in between that's really exciting and full of hope and full of mystery and all of that. And I think just savoring every single part of your relationship is so important. So tying it back, it's okay not to rush into marriage. It's okay to savor what you have for a little while and to really be present with the person that you love and the person that you're with. Really get to know them on a deeper level and really get to know yourself in relation to this other person. So next piece of advice is that it all works out in the end. And both of my parents have always said this to me because I tend to be an emotional person. Especially when I was younger, I would get stressed and overwhelmed really easily. I've been working on that, so it takes a little bit more now. I'm still a sensitive, emotional person, and that's something that I'm really proud of, and that's something that I think is a strength of mine, actually. But that said, I tended to get overworked or really worked up about things when they weren't going my way or they weren't going out as I expected. And I think this is a really good reminder for all parts of your life because it all works out in the end. The things that feel like they're against you are actually for you. If you get fired from your job, then that's probably a blessing in disguise, right? Maybe that company is about to go under next year and you don't even know it. And you got fired and were able to find a job that you actually like a lot better with people that you enjoy working with a lot more before the stress of the company shutting down. Or maybe you got broken up with and you're really sad about it, but maybe you guys had some growing to do in order to get back together. Or maybe your person that you're actually meant to be with is right around the corner and you're going to meet them at the farmer's market you go to this summer, but you never would have noticed them if you were in this relationship with this other person. Maybe your vacation got canceled or your flight got delayed or whatever, even the little tiny things like you're stuck in traffic. It all points us to where we're supposed to be and it all gets us to exactly the road that we're meant to be on. And I think that is really beautiful, keeping in mind, especially in the hard moments. This is when it's hard. When you're going through a really tough time and you're like, God, this fucking sucks. This is when it is so much extra important to keep this kind of mindset in mind that it all works out in the end. This is happening for me, not to me. What lesson can I learn from this? And how can I use this to help myself grow and evolve? When you take on that mindset, all the hard things really don't seem all that tough anymore. So just remember that if you're going through a hard time or if you're going through a really good time, that it all works out for you in the end. And the last piece of advice I'm going to discuss is actually something that my mom said. This was when I was crying about, again, that one guy from the first episode. If you want to hear more, you can go listen to it. But this is the one relationship that really kind of tore me up the most. But she told me that the only person that really matters is the one you end up marrying / settling down with. All the others, the ones that you're crying over right now, you look back and you see how silly it was because they weren't the ones you were meant to be with anyways. And I think that's really profound and really important because yes, I think it's beautiful that you cry over somebody because you love them and you're crying and you're hurt because you love them. I think that's really cool to say like the only reason you hurt that much is because you felt so much of another emotion. I think that's beautiful. But when my mom told me, I mean, she's right. When you look back at all the other relationships that didn't work out, you look back and you think to yourself like, wow, yeah, that didn't happen for a reason. It's silly to cry, to spend so many hours crying. If you need to do it, then do it. And I'm definitely one for crying. Everybody in my life knows how much I love to cry. But when you look back, it's true. You always end up with the person that you are meant to end up with. If you want to have kids and if you're meant to have kids, you'll end up having kids with the person who you are meant to have kids with. And I think that's really cool. And that's a really beautiful mindset to have. And I know that it's much harder in the moment to think that way. But from my experience, this has always rung true. And I think something important to note is that the other ones do matter because you loved them for a reason. And I think all the other relationships leading up to the relationship or the marriage that you're currently in, or the person that you do end up marrying / settling down with, all those taught you lessons, and they turned you into the person that you needed to be in order to meet and be with the person you are with and you are meant to be with. They turn you into the person that is able to handle the conflicts and the resolutions and creating the intimacy necessary to work through and build the relationship you want with the person that you want to be with the person that you choose to build that with and choose to grow love with. So I think that's really profound too, especially for someone like me who has focused a lot on relationships in the past. This is really nice to keep in mind from my mom. And it really coincides with my belief system too, and kind of falls in line with what we were just talking about, how it all works out in the end. What is meant to happen will happen. And the person that you're meant to be with, you will end up being with them. They can't pass you by. So I think I'm going to end it there. I would love to hear y'all's comments, or for you to share some profound insights from your parents, because no matter how much we hate to admit it, yes, our parents are right. Not all the time, but sometimes they have some really great things to share with us. So I would love to hear the advice that y'all have gotten that has left a lasting impact on you as well. So love you guys. Bye. See you next week. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you liked what you heard, then go ahead and subscribe so you get updates with us every week. You can also follow us on Instagram at KRC Coaching. If you're interested in working one-on-one, then go ahead and visit our website, krccoaching.com, to book your first 30-minute session for free. All right, thanks so much, you guys. Love you. Bye.